Just thought I'd do a quick mini video because it's quite hard to explain in text. I guess so. My issues with others, obviously, we've got this 3 month supply that we've just rejected off. It was a week supply. Obviously, it's only just closed below. I mean, God, this could still even resurrect itself in the next 7 days and close above here to make 3 month demand. But at the moment, it's closed just below this candle. So 3 month supply, so we have that rejection. Um, we're still in an uptrend, just about. It's a weak uptrend, and it's swing failed the high on the monthly, and we're still kind of holding, or at least this monthly zone with some wicks. So we're still kind of holding this range on the higher time frame, but then we have that 3 month above. And that's my concern, I guess, what we're seeing with all the alts that have really crashed. If you look at them, I was saying a number of times, they come off 3 month supply, and virtually all my alerts that were on demands were we're coming off 3 month supply or 2 month supply at these highs. And therefore a lot of the alts are now here. They've broken all these zones, and I already said, that they might well break these zones. We were looking for little bounces, at least on the majors in here. They've got some little bounces in some of them, and everything is now sort of increasingly making 4 or 5 day supply through here, and so many of them have 3 week. The ones that have now closed down here now have the 3 week supply, and they're probably going to have new monthly unless they bounce in the next week. So that's kind of the challenge. And then I was looking kind of at past PA, and it's probably not fair to compare because the structure here is so different to the structure here. But as you know, I've been concerned about this being a double top as well on the macro, with the target being down here somewhere. I can just as easily see price from having hit this zone here, just do a little bounce and then fall off a cliff, or maybe more like this, where we get a few days of up, or a couple of weeks, or even up into the supply in here, up into the sort of 250 area, and then drop down further, and then eventually kind of come back to here and or lower. So that's kind of my concern. And then on the bull side, remove the circles so you can see a bit more easily. But on the bull side, are we then, are we here, where we've made a higher low and we're making a higher low here, and then we're going to get another push, even if it doesn't take out all-time high, but to get up to this supply here, because this didn't reject ideally where you want it to. So, this would be a nice bull run, like for people who are calling alt season. I'm sure everybody would call alt season if we did that, because that would be a nice up move for alts. And, a lot of alts are, heavily oversold now. And it's quite interesting looking at alts actually. I was thinking about it, it's kind of the ones that came in, I don't know what the years are unfortunately, but like 2021, I feel like things like the era of like ZIL and XTZ and those things. I don't know about those two specifically because I haven't checked them, but I feel like that group are the ones that are breaking all-time lows. And when I say I mean this is strong relative to those, they're kind of basically down here. I feel like those are the ones that are kind of losing out. The majors are actually holding a little bit better, at least some of them. Well, things like, even DOT and, no, not near DOT and Atom, for example, are in that group, they're kind of breaking down at all-time lows. Or very close to that. Then you've got maybe the better majors like Link, Doggy, Ada, which obviously have died a bit yesterday, but they're structurally a lot better. BNB, they've got annual demands, 6 month demands. They're kind of holding similar to this up here. And then you've got the new stuff that doesn't have supply, which is the stuff that's giving the big runs. So I had if I can go onto this, my new list. This is the stuff that I was watching for kind of collapses, and I'm watching them for collapses because they're collapsing really nicely, like you can see here with Siren. I was really talking about looking for shorts to get this down, in a monthly demand, see what happens. It ran straight through down to the bottom here, but whether they'll recover, I don't know. Form's another one, this came down a lot more slowly, but it eventually, took time and fell off a cliff and is now back in monthly demand. But yeah, these are all kind of new ones: Syrup, ZBCN, White, Tibia, Hype. They're all the new ones, so they don't have supply, so they're able to run. Whereas I think things like, Atom and DOT and the other majors, they're struggling to run. Anyway, I just wanted this to be a short video. Yeah, total 3 is much the same scenario. We've got this kind of swing failure double top. It had, I think, just closed over the yearly here and is now back in 3 month demand. So this, maybe the majors could have that run, and this is obviously still bullish. So I need to see a little bit what happens here. Are we going to get a run properly down into these demands a bit lower? And that's total three. Let me look at total. So this the new one, which is total E100. This is total excluding the top 100. So it's kind of more interesting because then it's excluding those atoms and things like that, atom and dot, etc. But again, this doesn't help much either. Essentially it's just the middle of this range, so it could hold here. This is it's a 3-month level. I haven't got the box drawn in. Is it going to hold here? That didn't make a 3-week supply there, I don't think. But again, it's coming off 3-month supply at the high, so yearly demand at the low, 3 months at the high. So I guess what I'm seeing, like on so many of these, are just these triangles, and that's why I'm trying not to be too indecisive, but I am indecisive because we're getting so much triangling, on the lower time frames we're triangling. And I guess the big concern is that if, Bitcoin is ready to drop, then all these these charts are going to really get crucified. We're going to get big drops and even bigger drops on the alts, and maybe that's when we see the majors come down much deeper in their major demands but still hold. And the old school stuff like .zil, etc., is going to just die forever. And I feel like that might have been what happened from 2018 to 2020. Like the guys here, they never came back, and I think I talked about that a couple of the alts, things like SHIB, when I was trying to compare whether Fartcoin would have an all-time high, a new all-time high. And let's have a look quickly. I don't want to make this an hours long video though. See, this is why I'm kind of looking for the fall off a cliff, because I think these things are grinding up, and that sometimes they're getting a blow off top, so you have to be a bit careful. But this useless. I think this has probably still got further to go, but we'll see. Let me just go to my list. So let's see. So SHIB actually at the top. So yeah, SHIB, for example. So we have this. Remove my drawings. Had this huge run, at the beginning, and then it came back to support, and everyone's like, "Oh, a new all-time high," and we never got the new all-time high on that. And I think I also looked at Bonk. I think we did, for example. So Bonk had a huge run here and actually has not come back even close to that, and did make new all-time highs, but not very significantly. But if something like this wants to fall, at some point, obviously this is going to come back down here. So is it ready to do that now? This is not a very confident long entry. Like, it is a long entry, we are still on support, but it's not a confident one. Morg is probably not the best example. But yeah, anyway, that's kind of my concern, that that while people are calling for new all-time highs on things like Fartcoin, that is Fartcoin just going to do a kind of SHIB scenario where it's now just going to drift back down here. I've got an alert here for weekly demand. I think it's in there. This also did make a 2-month demand. So there's a lot of indecision. Is this 2 months going to hold? It's not a strong 2 months, but you'd expect a bounce off the top of it, which we got. But that was just this, I think, or it might actually have had a local bounce. I think here we had a bounce, made a higher high, but didn't take out that high. So this is still, again, weak. It's a weak demand. It's not a close above here, but that doesn't mean it's not gonna hold for a big move if it wants to. But it's just at what point is how deep inside this 2 month is it going to retrace? It could come back down here, could come back down here, or could even then flip the 2 months to a supply. But I mean, that's obviously later down the track. Yeah, so anyway, I guess that's kind of my indecision across the market at the moment when I look at the total and the others and total E100 and all that. And from a dominance perspective, yeah, that's probably the final thing. I've been talking about this for a while, that I was kind of hoping this would get a pump up into there. Or when it was in here, I was in undecided, and I was kind of like, well, if we're I was undecided. I was like, if it comes back up here, then I'd look for shorts on alts, and if it goes down here, I'd look for longs on alts. We then made a 3-week supply, so I then said, okay, we're watching this zone to see if we get that bounce rejection here, which is obviously what we've got. And then again, it's sort of similar scenario to this. We're coming into demand. It's a weak demand. It's already been tested once anyway. So the risk on this, is it going to fall away all the way down here? If this was a price chart, I don't know how dominance, and it might take 3, 5 years, 10 years to do this, but I don't know if dominance is really going to follow the same rules as price charts. But you know, this is the next area I'd be looking for possible long entries for others' dominance as well. So I guess obviously I don't think we're quite there yet. It's probably messy here, so it's not necessarily the easiest to judge. But yeah, total DeFi, I think, yeah, started to this I had hoped for, but again couldn't make it past supply. Now made new weekly supply, 3 week here. But if this wants to fall again, if it was a price chart, I'd be saying probably at this stage, and I obviously be watching here, but ideally you probably want down here. This has also got an annual supply rejected. Anyway, before I go into too much detail and make this video far too long, that's kind of my indecision at the moment. So for the short term, you know, we're looking for bounces here, and then I'm just going to want to see that, you know, in its favor, these zones above have already been tested on this. So it is possible, you know, we get a decent run and it just runs straight back through supply. So I'm in two minds about, you know, whether I want to put like more aggressive short entries. I put some short entries in this area for things that have broken this low, but I'm less inclined to kind of do so for like just in general the majors. I've been sort of considering it. Yeah, so you need to see a bit more here. You know, this could run through here if it wants to, but yeah, just be very careful at this point. You know, by all means enter longs, but you know, move your stops to break even as soon as you can. Be conscious that you're entering things that are stronger rather than you know, things that have broken this low, unless they've fallen into like a major monthly zone or something underneath. Yeah, and just trade really carefully at the moment because I do think there is a risk. You know, we're looking for a bounce, but there is a risk that this can fall down into here if it wants, you know, mimicking one of those patterns over to the left. Yeah, so I hope that's helpful. Give me a shout in chat if there's any questions.